Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel Reviewed, where we talk about all things television and film from today and yesteryear. So I wanted to come on here and give my thoughts on the show His and Hers. This recap will contain spoilers, so if you have not watched the show, I would suggest you not watch this video. Nonetheless, the show is centered around Anna. She is this reporter who had been gone for a year, okay? And she goes back to town where she's basically trying to revive her career as this news reporter. And she wants to report on this story where an unaliving has taken place in her hometown that she grew up in. Jack Harper is the lead detective on the case, and he also happens to be Anna's estranged husband. Detective Jack and his partner Priya, they're on the crime scene. And keep in mind that this is somewhat of a small town. So it's like everybody kind of knows everybody. And this young woman who was unalived, she is well known because she is married to a very wealthy man. Not only is she well known in the town, we come to find out later on that she has some ties to Jack and Anna as well. Anna shows up to the crime scene and she requested a specific cameraman named Richard. So, they say their hellos to one another and they go over to where the body is. And at this point, the police, they are trying to separate the reporters from, the detectives that are, getting evidence or whatever at the crime scene. So at some point, Anna yells out to Jack, "Hey, didn't you know her?" And she is talking about the lady who was laid out on the car. And so he kind of gives her this look like, okay, are you serious? And his partner, Priya, she's like, what's going on? And, he does end up letting Priya know that Anna is indeed his estranged wife. So, honey, we find out that Richard, he was requested specifically by Anna because Richard is married to the anchor who replaced Anna while Anna was away. Again, Anna is trying to revive her career. She was the head anchor on this news station. And so her requesting Richard was intentional. Not only was it intentional, honey, they end up sleeping together. And I'm like, okay, so you don't have no problem mixing business with pleasure. But again, once it's revealed that Richard is married to the head anchor who has currently replaced Anna, I was like, I guess that's her get back. Okay. Detective Jack and his partner Priya go visit the woman's husband. So not only does Jack know the woman, they were sleeping together. So much so that when they went to the morgue to view the woman's body, he was speaking to the lady who was handling her body, and she was like, it was so much male fluid found in her, this and then the third. The woman was stabbed like 40 times. So it was definitely intentional, and her fingernails were also clipped off. And I'm guessing that the fingernails was clipped off because whoever may have did the stabbing, she probably scratched them, and was, I guess they were just trying to make sure that they couldn't find any of her DNA under her nail bed. But honey, so Jack is freaking out because he literally left the lady. They were hooking up in his truck. They were, screwing each other in the truck or whatever. So after he left, it's like when the lady was unalive. But when he goes to talk to the woman's husband, the husband pretty much already let him know, not necessarily saying that he knew Jack was sleeping with his wife, but he said they had a situation where he was okay with his wife hooking up with guys. She loved guys with trucks and this and that and the third. So it wouldn't surprise him if one of the Johns that she was dealing with was the one that unalived her. And I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. When I tell you Jack had his hands all up in this mess, it was crazy, to the point where he even confiscated the woman's cell phone. He was deleting pictures of him, the pictures that he had sent her, because no one at this point had any, they didn't have any suspects. And we get introduced to Anna's mom. Her name is Alice. And Jack, he goes to check on Miss Alice. Miss Alice is seemingly having memory issues, okay? And so much so that, she's wandering the streets at night and things like that. So Jack, he goes to check on her, and it seems like the two of them have a really good relationship. We also just see that Jax, he's just a very uh, caring person. We do see him interact with his niece, and he just seems like he's just one of those people who always want to make sure he check on people and make sure that they're good. Anna goes to see her mom, and Jack is there. And, Jack tells her that, hey, your mom has been found wandering the streets. She seems like she's a little disoriented, can't remember, what she's doing and things like that. So during this conversation, we learned that Anna is the one who left. And again, she was gone for a year. And we also find out later on in the show that they had a child together, and their daughter ended up passing away, and it was just too much for Anna to deal with. So she decided that she just needed to leave. And so during the time that she was gone, she was not communicating with Jack or her mom. So they just pretty much was like she abandoned them, so to speak. But she was just basically trying to deal with the grief of losing her baby. So the blonde haired chick is Richard's wife. I cannot think of her name. Her name was Catherine when she was a teenager. But anyway, again, that is why Anna specifically wanted Richard to be her cameraman, because this lady has taken her spot at the news station. And Anna definitely wants to be head anchor at the news station again. Throughout the series, we get these flashbacks of Anna as a teenager, and we get introduced to her little group of friends that she used to hang with. And the dark haired girl, she is the one that they found on the car. So, I'm like, okay, so she knows the young lady. Again, they went to school together. The girl was sleeping with Jack at the time that she was unalive. But we also, get introduced to a girl named Catherine. Catherine is the girl who is not that attractive, and she seemingly wants to be in this group of girls. Like she wants to be with the in crowd. And when we were getting these flashbacks, I was like, okay, so this is giving kind of horror story tease, like when in horror movies, how you have girls or whatever teenagers, they something traumatic happens to them, and then they want to avenge, whatever, once they're adults. You know what I'm saying? Like they sit down and plot stuff out for years, and they'll have a high school reunion or something, or some type of meetup, and then they go crazy and start unaliving everybody. So I was like, okay, is this what this is going to be giving? Because it's definitely giving that. Okay. Indeed, it is giving revenge on unalivings, okay? Because not long after we get introduced to Anna as a teenager, her and her friends, they have another unaliving in the town. And she, as well as the young lady who were laid out on the car, were still friends. As a matter of fact, she was one of the last people that, the girl talked to. And so I'm like, okay, is Anna the one unaliving people? Because at this point, like I said, it was a lot of stuff um, surrounding Jack that could have made him the suspect and made him, you know, um, it looked as if he could have been the one who unalived the girl that was laid out on the car. But then you have this unaliving happen, and it's like, okay, what's this giving? And another thing that is happening as well is on these girls' bodies, they are finding these friendship bracelets. And come to find out, all of the girls that hung out together, all of them in that group, in that um, at that school, they all had these particular friendship bracelets. So again, it's definitely giving someone who wants revenge on these women because of something that happened to them when they were teenagers. Now, throughout the series, we get a little bit of Jack's sister Zoe, and I have to say, I really like Zoe. I wish they showed her a little bit more because, honey, she was a whole mess. She was an alcoholic. She was not that great of a mom to her daughter, but baby, she was funny. When she rolled up on old girl and stuck her middle finger, I was hollering. Okay, but Zoe now she's a little concerned. She goes to see Jack at work, and she was like, okay, what if I'm next? And Jack was like, ain't nobody gonna cause no harm to you. What are you talking about? And she was like, well, didn't Anna tell you what happened back in school? And so I'm like, okay, here we go with another clue. So is Anna the person who is going around unaliving these folks because she trying to again revive her career as a reporter? So the more unalivings that pop up, that's more stories that Anna gets to report on. And so I'm like, okay, what is going on? And Jack, he basically tells his sister that she ain't got nothing to worry about, but honey, he was wrong. Okay. So while Jack was going around cleaning up his mess, Priya is starting to suspect that he has something to do with it because of the cleaning up that he's doing. He had to do a DNA sample. They wanted a DNA sample of everyone who went to the crime scene. And honey, Jack goes and swab his niece's mouth because he already knew that not only was his DNA on old girl, it was up in her too. Okay. So he had to make sure again that he could wipe the slate clean as much as he could from himself. But while he was doing that, Priya was kind of side eyeing him like, what is really going on? Anna is talking to her mom, and again, Alice is seemingly on a mental health decline. Um, at some point during the show, Anna tells Alice, just like, hey, you're going to have to come live with me. Once everything wraps up here, I'm going to have you come live with me in Atlanta because, I need to be able to keep my eye on you, mom. You can't be out here alone by yourself. And her mom's like, I don't need to go anywhere. I'm fine where I am. And, it's like, girl, no, you're not. So in this moment, Alice is cooking some eggs for Anna, honey, and she ends up serving the eggs to her with all these eggshells in it. And I was like, okay, yeah, ma'am has kind of lost it quite a bit. We also get a moment where Priya, she goes to see Alice because at this point they're asking questions, trying to figure out, if anybody knows anything, because again, they still don't have any suspects. And given where the unaliving happened, the first one with the lady laid out on the car is kind of close to where Alice lives. But Alice is there, and Priya, she's fixing. Priya is talking to Alice, and Alice is fixing Priya something to drink. I don't know if it was supposed to be coffee or tea, but honey, she serves her up a whole mug of water. Okay, hot water, and Priya plays along. She stirs the cup like she's preparing, to drink her tea or coffee. But at some point, Priya does let Anna know. She's like, your mom is showing early signs of dementia. I dealt with it with my granddad, so I kind of recognize the signs. Also, we get a moment where we see Alice wander off again, and Jack, they call him to come, take her home. And so this is what makes Anna, basically let her mom know, hey, you're gonna have to come back to Atlanta with me because I can't have you out here by yourself. We got to get you the right doctors and get you the right kind of help. And of course, once again, Alice is declining. She does not want to leave. She's just like, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. But clearly, something is. Okay. So, honey, here are the scrambled eggs that Alice prepared for Anna. And I'm talking about she scrambled the whole egg. Okay. So we end up finding out that Catherine, the young lady who was the unpopular, unattractive girl that Anna, she tried to incorporate with her group of friends, we find out that she is also the anchor. Okay. She is the anchor that replaced Anna while Anna was away, the anchor that is married to Richard, the cameraman. So many things started to happen in this series, right? Because eventually we do see that Jack's sister is unalive. She's drowned in the bathtub. And so once that happens, I was like, okay, it's the cameraman and his wife. That was my opinion. I was like, it's the cameraman and his wife because she would have every reason to want to get revenge on these girls for them basically pretending to be her friends. Some pretending is honey. Like they pretended to be her friend when all they were doing was really embarrassing her and bullying her. So I was like, okay, she has every right to want to harm these girls. But honey, when we got to see Catherine in her home life, Catherine was a whole mess. Like she literally um, took her sister's asthma medication, and she pressed all the air out. Like her sister literally ended up passing away on a boat ride because she pressed out all the girls' asthma medication. And I was like, okay, so she was just one of them, just one of those, jealous of her sister, even though her sister was like, girl, you need to stop eating. You need to push back from the table. Her sister wasn't the nicest. However, I was like, so Catherine has it in her to go around and unalive people. So I'm no longer considering Jack, and I'm no longer considering Anna, because after everything happened with the second lady, once she had her throat slit, I was like, okay, maybe it's definitely not Jack, but I was still kind of questionable about Anna. But once everything happened with Jack's sister, I was like, yeah, something is definitely off, because why would she want to hurt Jack's sister? Even though the sister did stick a middle finger at her. But anyway, once Catherine's real identity was revealed, because it wasn't hard to kind of figure out who she was, I was like, okay, yeah, she has every right to want to unalive these girls. Nonetheless, Anna, she ends up going to this lake house with Richard, and we start getting these flashes of this party that they had in those woods, kind of close to the area where Richard and his wife's lake house was. And so we're getting these flashes, and Anna, she starts looking at all these pictures on the walls in the lake house. And so for me, I'm still thinking, okay, it's definitely Richard and his wife. And of course, Anna starts to think the same thing, but she does not have any signal. She don't have no service. And at this point, Jack, he done found his sister in the tub. Honey, she done drowned in her own blood, like she gone, okay? And, you know, Anna, she's able to finally reach out to Jack. But Jack, I think he gets a call from Priya first, and Priya, she ends up popping up at the house, stalling Jack. He's not able to leave. He had to end up punching her lights out, literally, okay, to end up getting away from her, because he needed to go and get Anna. So he gets to the house. Richard's wife, the blonde haired lady, she gets to the house, and she and Anna fight. Nonetheless, the blonde haired lady ends up unalive. When the police get there, they end up arresting Richard, but Richard was like, I didn't have nothing to do with this. I don't know what y'all talking about. So they basically pin everything on the cameraman and his wife. But since the wife is now unalive, it is what it is. Now, all of this ended up happening at the beginning of episode 6. So once she was out of the picture and Richard was out of the picture, I was like, okay, here we go again. Now we got to figure out who did it, because of course they are not going to unalive the person who's actually going around doing all these unalivings. They're not going to get rid of them at the beginning of the episode. And so I was like, okay, so is it really Anna who was going around unaliving all these people, or is it really Jack? No, it was neither one of them. Okay. And it wasn't the blonde haired lady either. And I was like, okay, this is getting on my nerves. I literally stopped watching the last episode, because I was like, I don't have time to be playing mental gymnastics to try to figure out who is going around here unaliving these people. Like, come on, this is absolutely ridiculous. Okay. So in the second half of episode 6, we get a flash forward to the future. So they're a year ahead. And as you can see, Anna, she is back as the anchor at the news station. And not only that, she is expecting another baby. So Jack and Jack's niece, because now, they are taking care of Jack's niece because his sister is gone. They end up going, to the town again, and they end up at her mom's. They go to visit Alice. And so, everyone is happy and seemingly doing well, including her mother. And I was like, okay, so you mean to tell me your mom had mental health decline, but she's still living by herself? And I was like, okay, here we go. So the whole thing with Alice, right? We would see her, well, the few moments we got of Alice, we knew that she was wandering off, and she made it seem as if she was unaware of where she was and what she was doing. Um, and I was like, so this woman, y'all going to see your mom, but your mom seems to be there by herself. She did have someone open the door who I assume was like a nurse or something, but I wasn't clear on if that's exactly who the person was that greeted them when they finally went to her mom's house. And so Anna finds this letter in her room that her mom wrote her. So she opens the envelope, and we start to get this whole background on what exactly transpired and why these women were unalive. So Anna, she always wanted to be in front of the camera. Okay, she always wanted to be a anchor, a news anchor. So she had this video camera when she was a teenager, and she would go around, making all these videos or whatever. So we get this full, the full scenario about the party that took place in the woods. And what ended up happening was the girls who Anna thought were her friends, they were not her friends. Okay, we already knew they wasn't Catherine's friends, but clearly they wasn't Anna friends either. There was a moment in the show where we see Anna, she's trying on like some clothes for her sweet 16 birthday. And the girl, she ends up taking a picture of her in her bra. And honey, they end up going to they have this little get together in the woods, and three guys end up showing up. And the three guys that showed up, they are there because they paid the girl to basically take advantage of Catherine. Okay. And Anna ends up, you know, helping Catherine get away from those guys. Now, mind you, her camera is still rolling, right? And Miss Alice is watching this video on television, on her TV. So she helps Catherine escape from those guys, and they end up assaulting Anna. So Miss Alice is sitting down watching her daughter get assaulted by these guys. And her friends are just sitting on the couch and watching it happen. Not only that, Catherine gonna walk her behind up out of there and basically not even try to help the girl after the girl helped her. But I guess in that moment, Catherine maybe felt like that Anna was in on it too, but in actuality, she was not. So Alice is watching this unfold, and this is what set her off to go and get revenge for what they allowed to happen to her daughter. So it is revealed that Anna's mom, Alice, is indeed the person who was going around unaliving these women. Okay. And the way she was able to pull it off is because, one, she is an elder. So people automatically assume that if she played up the whole thing about her mental health declining, they would go along with it and believe her, and indeed they did. I was like, honey, ma'am, mental health was not declining. Ma'am was taking mental notes. Okay. So the reason Alice was able to be successful in carrying out these unalives is because she had keys to everybody's house. So apparently she was like the cleanup woman. Okay. She cleaned people's homes and businesses. So that's how she was able to get into Zoe's home. That's how she was able to get to the girl whose neck she slashed. She was able to get into her home or business, you know, and be welcomed because they knew who she was. And, her seeing what happened to her daughter, it just sent something off in her. And the thing that kind of blew me back though was when she was, right as because all of this is playing out while we're seeing Anna read the letter. And she said that, they stole your little girl from you. So I wanted to make sure that you and Jack had another daughter, because now Jack and Anna were raising his sister's child. And this is what Zoe was talking about when she went to go see Jack. She was like, did Anna tell you what happened that night? Something terrible happened. And of course, Jack had no idea what Zoe was talking about. And so we got to see it play out in that videotape, you know. And I have to say, they did a good job with with playing up on Alice's mental health, because we saw her take off her clothes and walk down the street naked. And she played that up like she was disoriented and didn't know where she was. And, for me, at some point I was like, could it be the mom? Because I was like, the way that she keeps disappearing and not remembering what she's doing, I did for a moment think that it could have been her. But again, they were so heavy, have some of the evidence and some of the things that they were throwing out there was so heavily saturated with it could have been possibly being Jack or Anna or the news anchor woman and her husband Richard doing it, it completely threw me off of Alice's trail. Like I was like, I thought about it for a moment, then I was like, nah. So, honey, she indeed was going around unaliving these people. I'm like, how did she drown Zoe? But when I thought about it, Zoe, she took some edibles. So she took some edibles and she probably was kind of zoned out because you see when Alice walked into the bathroom, she kind of looked up at her like, hey, like girl, my whole thing would have been like, what are you doing in my house? How did you get in here? But I guess since she was inebriated on some edibles, honey, she was just cool, calm, and collective, and that's how Alice was able to drown her in the tub. But not only did she drown, it looks like she must have stabbed her a couple of times too, because remember when Jack went into the bathroom, the tub was full of water and blood mixed together. Honey, Miss Alice was sending the folks to be on a permanent vacation with the Lord, okay? And my thing was, girl, what about the guys who actually assaulted Anna? And I get it, it was easier for her to have access to the girls because, they were familiar with Miss Alice. So it was easier for her to manipulate them and be able to carry out these crimes against them. Whereas with those guys, she would have had to track them down. It probably would have been a longer process or whatever. Um, but I will say that, it was clever, for them to make it be her mom, the writers or whatever of this limited series. I also, it was very interesting that we also found out that Miss Alice, she ended up clipping the fingernails off of the first girl she unalived because she was trying to set it up to make it seem like the news anchor was the one who was going around unaliving people. But, when the news anchor ended up getting popped by Priya, honey, Jack's partner, that kind of derailed that particular plan where she was going to, set it up to make it seem like, again, the news anchor was the one going around unaliving those women. Now, I will say for me, in my opinion, this did not have to be a limited series. I feel like it could have just been a movie, okay? And outside of the plot twist, with Miss Alice being the culprit, again, it just seems as though lately, and it's enough that it's noticeable that they are coming out with a lot of limited series and or movies where they are having these huge plot twists at the end. And even though it can be interesting, it can also be superfluous. Like everything doesn't have to be a who done it type thing, I personally, I do like movies where we already know who the person is and we just wait for everybody else around them to figure out that they're the ones going around doing these things, you know what I'm saying? And I guess when it came to this series, they wanted it to be 6 episodes because they kept saturating so much evidence. When it involved Anna and Jack, they just kept throwing out all these things where it could just seemingly make more sense for them to be the ones that were going around unaliving these people, as well as Richard, the cameraman, and his wife. Just a lot of things that they were putting out there. Again, back to when Catherine, she removed all the medicine out of her sister's inhaler. You know what I'm saying? So we knew that she had it in her, right? But I guess this was Alice, looking after her child. And, the letter, I guess that was a love letter to her daughter, letting her know that, hey, I'm gonna always look out for you no matter what. And, since she was an elder, again, people were gonna look the other way and just assume that she was losing her mind. But the acting was good in this show. For me personally, it took me a couple of days to finish it because it just wasn't pulling me in. But at the same time, I was like, I just want to know who the person is, who's the individual. So, I ended up finishing it. But again, I think it could have been a movie. It really didn't have to be a limited series. I do understand why they did it that way. But you know, I just, again, it seems like everybody's doing the same thing. I think the one show that I watched recently where it was what it was Beast in Me. Like that guy was crazy. We like it wasn't no figuring it out. We knew exactly who it was. He was exactly who we thought he was from beginning to end. Okay. I really enjoyed that show because it wasn't a plot twist. You know what I'm saying? Like we got what we got, and he indeed was a whole fool. Okay. But nonetheless, if you like shows that have um that clue type of thing going on where, oh my god, who done it, I'm trying to figure it out, then this is definitely the show for you. And if not, if you're kind of like, girl, give me something else, then it is what it is. I would say it's worth the watch because again, the acting was really good. But outside of that, it is what it is. Nonetheless, that is all I have for you guys in this video. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much for your support. Bye.